Welcome back to the Dershow. A minute late. Sorry for that. Breaking news that the Supreme Court of the United States, in a administrative decision by the Chief Justice himself, has paused the absurd requirement by the district judge that the United States, send an army to El Salvador and retrieve that guy who may have been or may not have been a member of a gang and bring him back to the United States. He set a deadline of tonight. The Chief Justice said, no, we're not going to require a deadline of tonight. Let's take our time. We'll see. We'll wait. Let the Supreme Court decide. The justices, whether or not the federal district judge has actual jurisdiction to compel the United States government, to compel the El Salvador government to return somebody who was mistakenly sent there. The United States government admits it was a mistake and admits that it is responsible for trying to get him back. Question is, can they get him back? They certainly can't do it in 24 hours. And that was an absurd ruling. The court should have said that you have to make best efforts to return him in the most reasonable time available. And that the United States government would have complied with. And I think that's what the Supreme Court will ultimately decide. Now, this gets us to the issue that I really wanted to discuss on the show tonight. Everybody's been talking about, Khalil this, should he have been deported? Was there real evidence? Is it mere free speech? He did compare Columbia University to Nazi Germany. Not the most suitable a comparison, and the MIT and the Tufts and Harvard, and there are students that are going to be deported. Some of them are supporters of terrorism. Some of them are merely very anti-American and pro-Hamas. But for me, it raises a much broader question that I haven't heard discussed. Why do we have so many foreign students in our American universities? I started teaching at Harvard 61 years ago. There would always be a couple of students from foreign countries. Oh, they were so exotic. There's a student from Portugal. There's a student from Kenya. Here's a student from China. Wow. And you get to know them, and it's fun. They added diversity. Today, a very, very significant number of the students, both undergraduate and graduate students, are from foreign countries. And they're not coming here to settle and become citizens. They're coming here to get an education and then use their education to benefit their home country. They're going to go back to their home country and they're going to benefit their home country. That's admirable. I understand that. And I've worked with a lot of foreign students from foreign countries. I was the faculty advisor to Israeli students, many of whom came. They have excellent universities there to get a master's degree, etc. The question is, does the American university really benefit enough to justify this incredibly increasing number of foreign students that today dominate many parts of American universities? Let's get one thing clear. Every foreign student who gets into an American university takes the place of an American student. Now, I'm not one of these America firsters that you always have to think only of Americans, but you wonder if you have equally qualified American student and an equally qualified student from Qatar, and the student from Qatar not only is going to pay full tuition, the American student, at least a third of them get scholarships. Qatari students don't get scholarships, but probably comes with a grant from Qatar to the department or to the university. So I understand the motive why American universities are pushing to get more and more and more foreign students, because A, they don't get scholarships, so they pay full tuition. They help pay for the universities, and many of them bring with them grants from their countries, particularly Arab countries, but not exclusively Arab countries. And so the real question is, and we've seen that a lot of the demonstrations, the anti-American demonstrations, the anti-Israel demonstrations, the encampments that have really hurt American education are led and dominated by the Khalils of the world, foreign students who come in under student visas. Then they get a green card. Maybe they marry an American citizen. In this case, he met the American citizen in Syria, I think. But she is or was become an American citizen. Um, was he intending to remain in America and use his education to help Americans and to help Americans of all backgrounds, or just Americans of his background? I don't want to sound xenophobic. There is meritocracy, and we ought to take the students who are most meritocratically deserving. I don't think we're doing that. I think we're giving a substantial advantage today to the admission of foreign students to the disadvantage of American students. Prove me wrong. And I'd be happy to rescind my point of view, but that was certainly my experience. I did not find, on the whole, the foreign students as qualified as the American students. In fact, I don't think the university did, because they had remedial classes for them, etc. But foreign students have helped make American universities rich, but at the expense of whom? At the expense of American students, at the expense of the American future. After all, if students are going back to their own countries and helping their own countries prosper, and let's assume the country is China, do we really benefit from educating a vast number of Chinese students? I've participated in it. I taught classes to Chinese students, and many of them are absolutely brilliant. And these were not, one of them, I remember, was going to stay in the United States, but many of them were going to go back and benefit China, which is not a friend of the United States. We don't get a lot of Russian students, but we get enough. And I've had Russian students. And, for me, it's very helpful, because when I have a case anywhere in the world, I know who to call. I can immediately get a former student of mine or a student of one of my colleagues who went back to practice in his or her home country, and I can establish a relationship professionally and help my case and maybe help her case or his case. So, there are benefits, and I certainly would never exclude or have a quota on foreign students. My question really is, have we struck the right balance between admitting foreign students and other students? Now, some schools might say, well, when we admit foreign students, we don't take places away from American students. We just add places to the class. Well, that's not right. I mean, the bigger the class, you could say the same thing about having, African-American students based on affirmative action, race-based affirmative action. You could say, well, we don't have to take spaces away from white students, just add, make the classes bigger. The schools resist that. They say, we don't want to make our classes bigger. So if they don't want to make their classes bigger, Harvard likes to keep its entering class at around 2,000, something like that. For every foreign student admitted, that's an American student who may be more qualified, who's not admitted. So don't misunderstand me. All in favor of admitting foreign students on the merits if they're equally qualified, not discriminating against foreign students, but not discriminating in favor of foreign students either. I'd like to hear more about the facts. I'd like to know more about the percentages. I don't think these are data that universities feel good about sharing. I'd also like to know how much money universities make by admitting foreign students, how much better they do by admitting foreign students than by admitting domestic students. I don't even know the answer to this most obvious question. We should all know the answer. Is tuition exactly the same for an American student as it is for a foreign student? It's not an absurd question. In many state universities, tuition is different. If you're an in-state person, your tuition is half or less than half of if you're an out-of-state person, because state universities were built to help the people of that state, not the people of other states. And, you great universities. I'm going to be watching 2 of them tonight. Could you believe the end of that Duke game? I'm sorry, but I don't understand how any great team winning by as many as they were winning with as few seconds left could have blown it. I think they were 9 points ahead, and then they lost by 3. That means 12 points in a relatively short period of time. I mean, when I was playing high school basketball, we learned how to play the clock. Of course, there wasn't a 24 or 30-second rule, but we're not talking about that because there wasn't enough seconds left. Was it bad coaching? I don't know. Speaking of coaching, it's interesting. In the Final Four, 3 of the 4 coaches had Israeli connections. 3 of the 4, 2 of them lost. But Auburn's coach, very big supporter of Israel, Zionism, made statements after October 7th. The winning coach from Florida played on Israel's Maccabee team, and I think was an assistant coach under the Auburn coach. And I think in tonight's game as well, the coach from the University from Florida State has an Israeli connection too. You know, when I was growing up, the joke was at your bar mitzvah, you learn your chances of playing on an NBA team are less than your chances of owning one. Okay, a little bit of a racist twinge there, but Jews can tell those kinds of jokes about ourselves. But you have to change that now. Your chances of coaching a Final Four are better than your chances of playing in the Final Four. Anyway, I'm a big basketball fan. I'm looking forward to tonight's game. I loved both of the Final Four games, but the Duke game was beyond belief. And if any of you want to comment on that, I'm happy to hear your comments. But how do you lose a game that you're so far ahead with so few seconds to go? How do you do that? You got to give enormous credit to Florida State. Look, I'm a resident of Florida, so my sympathies are with Florida, and I will be rooting for them tonight. But I just don't get it. I mean, Florida was played beyond belief, but Duke, I think Duke lost that game, and I think it was a winnable game. Play the clock, timeout, slow the ball down, have a play for your inbound pass when it's so important. Don't let the other team steal the inbound pass. It just threw me for a loop as a basketball fan. Okay, let's get back to more serious matters. Anything more serious than March Madness? I guess so. So what's the answer on foreign students, and why are so many of the foreign students? I don't know the percentages, but certainly in numbers, why are so many of the foreign students anti-Israel and anti-American? And does the United States have the right to say to foreign students, all right, you can come to our country and get an education, but we're not going to let you spend your time here attacking America and attacking America's allies and intimidating students and not letting them go to class. No, maybe you haven't committed any crimes, but we never should have let you in the first place if we knew. And you should have told us under the law. But if we knew that you were sympathetic to America's enemies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, American soldiers may die as the result of going after the Houthis. If we knew you were supportive of these Islamic terrorists, we never would have let you in. And if they would have let them in, that would have been a serious mistake. Remember, the First Amendment does not apply to decisions who to admit in the country. We could say, if we wanted to, that we will not accept people who exercise their First Amendment right to attack America. No, we want you to be patriotic. I remember when my friends, some of them took citizenship tests, they were required to be patriotic to Americans and to America. Patriotic doesn't mean uncritical, but it also doesn't mean having encampments at Columbia University, comparing Columbia to Nazis. So I hope that Khalil remains deported. I hope that anybody who supports Hamas and has a student visa gets deported. These are not First Amendment issues because these people can exercise free speech outside the country. They can send Zooms. As I've said before, if Khalil were to make a speech on Zoom today from his cell, wherever he is, it would be the most widely watched speech he had ever made. So you still have your free speech rights, but you don't have the right to be in this country and get one of the greatest, what used to be one of the greatest educations in the world. It still is in some areas. But boy, to tell you, I would not today go to an American university, at least many American universities, and study political theory or sociology or some of the other subjects that have become infected with bias and bigotry. So I think that these deportation cases have alerted us to a bigger problem. And the bigger problem is how we decide who to admit to this country, how we decide who we want to become part of the American fabric, and particularly who we want to admit to American universities. Now, you can say American universities have the right to make their own decisions within limits, but they don't have the right to tell us who to give visas to. And I think we ought to be more selective. And I think we ought to ask more probing questions on visa applications as to how the students intend to spend their time. If they intend to spend their time, hating America, defeating America, destroying American universities, blocking access to campus, no, go to another country. We don't really want you here. We don't want to give you an education that you can then go back to your country and help your country defeat America, not only on the marketplace economically, but possibly and arguably even on the battlefield. We are training people who may very well go back to their countries and help them to develop weapons for use against America. So these are fair questions. I don't think the answers immediately jump out at you. Again, don't want to impose restrictions or quotas or anything of that kind on foreign students. I want meritocracy to prevail. If you're better than an American applicant, okay. But if you're not as good as an American applicant, I don't see why you get an advantage just because you're going to pay full freight and maybe you'll bring with you some added benefits of economics as the Qataris and the Saudis do. I have a friend who was a major administrator in a major American university, and he told me that at his university there were 5 slots allocated that the president could give out without regard to merit, and they always went to Saudi Arabians, not because they're smarter than people from Norway, but because they have more money and they're willing to give them to American universities. Give is an overstatement. Use the money in order to benefit. Because remember, America first. Every country is first. Saudi Arabia first. Qatar first. Every country puts its own interest first, and that's understandable. The question is, we in America, who are a global power, both economically and militarily, but also educationally, how we use our educational power to not only our advantage, the advantage of the world. Of course, if you're a cancer researcher from I don't care where, and you're going to help develop a cure for cancer or some other really, really important research project, we want you. Because we want the project. And if it can be better done in the United States with collaboration, fine. But second, nice to get the credit for it. But if you just come in here to increase your skills as an anti-American zealot opponent of democracy, no, I'm not in favor of that. Neither side should overstate their positions, but there are positions on all sides. And right now, almost every American university is complaining bitterly about Trump's deportations policies. Look in the mirror. Ask yourself whether you're not part of the cause of that problem by having admitted so many foreign students who are less qualified just based on the fact that they were going to contribute more money to your universities. Are you part of the problem? Should you have done something to make sure that the Khalils of the world did not get admitted to Columbia and live on its campus, even though he wasn't a student at the time? Did you facilitate fraud on the applications? Did your advisors tell students to not acknowledge that they were radicals who want to bring down America and bring down America's allies? So, complicated problem. I don't think it's been addressed or discussed anywhere else. So I'm glad to have provided a forum for that discussion. I'm sure I'll get angry letters on all sides, but hey, that's what I do. So let's look at some letters. All right, here's a WTF. What is Alan talking about? Now it's about the Mayor Adams case. A judge dismissed the charges against Adams, not Trump. No, that's not true. It was the Trump administration that dismissed the charges. The judge just rubber stamped it. The judge just said, I have no authority. If I had a choice, I probably wouldn't dismiss the charges. But I don't have a choice because there's no case in controversy. And the judge said it's the Trump administration's decision. And that's why the charges were dismissed. So I think the Trump administration gets full credit or full blame, depending on how you feel about it. And I got a number of letters saying, why didn't I get into the merits of the Adams case? Because it's a close case and it's complex. And I'm sure there was enough to indict. And the question is, would there have been an indictment had the political circumstances been different? A little hard to determine that question. But the decision was made by the Trump administration. As you know, the assistant district attorney, U.S. attorney who became acting U.S. attorney, my former student, Danielle Sassoon, did not want the charges dismissed. She thought they were valid and that the dismissal was based on an improper quid pro quo, and she resigned. I admire her for her resignation, but I also think technically, legally, constitutionally, the Trump administration was probably within its powers to do it. Maybe it went about doing it in an awkward way. It probably just should have sent somebody from Washington, D.C., from Justice Maine, and gone into court and say, we hereby dismiss, Your Honor, you have no choice. Instead, they tried to do it through the U.S. attorney, which caused these resignations. Okay, so here's a categorical statement that somebody makes in a letter. A governor has the power to pardon anyone in this state. No, it's not true. It's true about many states, but not all states. In some states, the governor has to get the approval of a commission or a group of people. In some states, it's another group that has the pardon power. In general, the chief executive of any unit has the power to pardon, as the president does. But in some states, it's not nearly as unequivocal as it is for the United States government. Under our Constitution, there's absolutely no doubt who has the power. It's the President of the United States. He or she exclusively has the power to pardon and commute, and that can't be second-guessed anywhere else by any court or in any jurisdiction. Okay. Plea bargaining should not even be, it says illegal, period. I think what he meant, the letter, plea bargaining should not even be legal, period. And it's not in some countries. At least they say so. In Germany, they say, no, we don't plea bargain. If you throw yourself on the mercy of the court, maybe the court will take it into consideration. But in the United States, if we didn't have plea bargaining, we'd have to close down many courthouses. There are so many crimes on the book. Alexander Hamilton once said, you measure a democracy not by how thin its criminal code is, but by how thick it is. Because it's not that you want everything to be criminal, but you want everything that's criminal to be in the books so nobody makes up any crimes. And so we have so many crimes that require discretion. And when you have discretion, you're going to have plea bargaining. And when you have crowded courts, you're going to have plea bargaining. And when you have witnesses who have to be used to testify against other defendants, you're going to have plea bargaining. So I can't imagine that we will see the end of plea bargaining. I mentioned my new book, The Preventive State, which will be out, I think, in a month or so, dealing with how our governments are moving much more toward trying to prevent cataclysmic events, crimes, illnesses, environmental disasters, even comets hitting the Earth. Look up as a movie I included in the book. And so somebody in response to that asked me, have you watched the movie Minority Report? I did. In fact, I used to assign the video sometimes in my class on prevention because the movie, based on a science fiction book, is about essentially the preventive state. They don't use that term. It's a term I coined. But nonetheless, it was about a phenomenon similar to the one I wrote about in my book. And you can order my book in advance from Amazon. There's a really good introduction by Justice Stephen Breyer, a very nice blurb by the former president of Harvard, dean of the University of California School at Berkeley, Steven Pinker, and a number of other people. I try to write it for the general public, although it's a serious book, and it's an academic book, but it's an accessible book. The Preventive State. Okay. Oh, I played or talked a little bit about my cousin Shalom Lemmer, who is this great cantor with this incredible voice. He sings in Yiddish and in English and in Hebrew and everything like that. And he has a fan. So the fan says, Shalom Lemmer is amazing. The professor comes from a family full of talent and high achievement. Mostly. And I'm very proud of my kids and grandkids, and they've done very well for themselves, and they work very hard. I've always said we're not a family of geniuses, but we're a family of very hardworking people who see things in a somewhat more questioning way, and that has helped my family achieve the kind of success. The Lemmers were born with God's gift of beautiful, beautiful voices. One of them is the chief cantor at a synagogue in Manhattan, and the other is a pop star. And I'm very proud of them, and they're good people. This is a statement that I just wish everybody would agree to. A level playing field is needed, and I agree with that. A level playing field is needed. I'm getting a lot of letters from people saying, why don't you join the briefs against the Trump administration going after law firms? I will not sign a letter or a brief against the Trump administration going after law firms. Why? Because the people who want me to sign that brief didn't go after the 65 Project when they were going after lawyers who are on the other side. So it's completely polemical and political. I'm not going to join that. I would write a brief. I would join a brief. I would join a letter which condemned the 65 Project, along with what's going on now, and which said that no lawyer should ever be criticized or condemned or punished because of who they represent if they do it fairly and honestly and ethically. Happy to do that. But look, as a victim of the 65 Project, as I said before, I've been cleared completely of all the frivolous charges that they brought. But nonetheless, they cost me, $100,000 in legal fees to fight all these charges. And I always fight. I fight back. And I would like to put an end to the 65 Project. And I'd like to see them investigated by Congress, because they are a bunch of evil McCarthyites who tried desperately to prevent decent lawyers from representing people that they didn't approve of. Finally, just told my wife how much fun it would have been to have you as a teacher in law school. I would never have missed a class. Well, I have to tell you the one thing, my classes were always filled, and always were filled not only with students, but with people who were just sitting in on the class. And we always had the aisles filled. And on more than one occasion, the fire people came and had to ask people to leave the aisle. So I'm proud of the fact that I was a good teacher, an exciting teacher. I think my tombstone will read never boring, never boring. I don't think there was a boring moment in any of my classes. And I hope there aren't too many boring moments on this podcast. See you tomorrow for another non-boring half hour. See you then.